Welcome back. Today we're doing a parts replacer because I have nothing better to do. It's been raining and, well, this needs done. So we have a, what year is this?
1997.
97 Ford Explorer, two-wheel drive with a good old 5-liter in it. I keep trying to tell him to put a Windsor in it, but he doesn't want to listen. So now we have a tie rod boot. No, ball joint boot, my mistake. Upper ball joint boot that is ripped and torn. Per PA inspection, that will not pass, so we are replacing it. First step, obviously, take off the wheel and get things disassembled. So we're going to take that off, we're going to get everything loose and get the vehicle up in the air. Okay, here we are with the wheel removed. You can see what we're working with here. Here is the ball joint. You can see the boot is in pretty bad shape right there. Bear with the lighting as the light's behind me to get good light for us to work. So what we're doing here is first we jacked up the vehicle, supported it on the jacking tab on the control arm. So these are actually designed for this particular application. Put a jack stand underneath them, they support it. The jack right now, the orange jack there, is not actually supporting any weight, but I like to leave them there just because you have a way to catch the vehicle if something does happen, get it right back up off the ground if it falls, etc. However, this is properly supported and chalked and everything, so we should not have any issues like that. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing the entire upper control arm assembly here. As you can see, get it all in one shot. We're going to remove this bolt for the ball joint, and then after we remove that bolt, we're going to remove the mounting bolts in the back, and the whole assembly will come out. Okay, here is the first bolt that holds the control arm to the frame of the vehicle. You can see it's got this funky little washer on it. Well, that's for your alignment. So, long story short, when it sits in there, on either side, there is a piece of metal. And when you turn it, it moves the bolt in and out, right and left in relation to the vehicle within slots in the frame. That's used to adjust your caster and camber on this vehicle. There's one on the front and one on the back. So what you want to do when you take these out, which we're going to get this thing aligned, so it's not going to matter very much. We just need to get it close enough to get it down the road. But if you don't want to get in alignment, you're going to want to mark between this bolt and somewhere on the frame to line it back up to the same spec it was at before. So it's very crucial if you don't want an alignment to make sure you know where this bolt was in relation to the frame. Always mark the bolt end, not the nut. So again, little pro tip there for you. Mark your eccentric bolts. That's what it's called. It's called a eccentric bolt. Mark any eccentric bolts before you go ahead and take things apart so you can get them back together the same way and you can avoid added charge to get it aligned. If you are going to get alignment afterwards, which I'd highly recommend, however, like I just said, it's not necessary. If you are going to get alignment afterwards, it does not matter near as much. You just need to get it close enough to drive down the road. Okay, now you can see we have the control arm currently out of the vehicle. You can look in here and you can see the slot where the bolt rides for that camber adjustment I mentioned earlier. And I'm having trouble keeping good lighting here for you. There's a slot on the other side also right in here, where again the bolt will slide forward and back, which controls your caster and camber. You also have the slots up here in the front pocket. And if we can get a good shot in there, you can see, there we go, roughly right over here. There we go. There is a little metal bracket, and over here is the other part of the little metal bracket that the eccentric turns in to make it move back and forth in the slot here. A little hard access to see because of everything in the way, but once you're actually in the car, it's not near as bad as I'm making it seem. So since we have the ball joint out and the control arm assembly out, I'll show you that is definitely ripped and torn pretty bad. And this one was not replaced too long ago. The pivot bushings themselves are in good shape. You could probably do just a ball joint, but since they're pressed in, and technically unit assembly on these, we're going to do the entire arm. So another thing to mention is the bolt for this control arm on the rear, for the rear bolt on the control arm to the frame was quite a pain, because you have a bunch of other stuff right in here, including fuel lines, brake line, and the shock mount. So because of that, you do have to consider that you may have to disconnect these fuel lines or just move them aside to make clearance to get that bolt the rest of the way out. However, you don't need to cut anything. It's not a bolt you have to cut in half. It will come out properly. The new one will go back in properly without any issues. Okay, so right now we're going to cover the retainer bolt for the ball joint. This goes through the spindle and sits in right like that to that groove. So that is why that weird groove is on this particular ball joint, is so the retainer bolt goes in and holds it in place. You can see there's a solid part to the shank, and then a threaded part. The solid part is what's going to engage onto that ball joint for you and hold that ball joint from coming back out. Our new control arm came with new bolt here for this. However, if yours didn't, I would recommend double checking, make sure yours is in 100% good shape. You don't want any marring on the threads. There's a little bit of rust on these. That could become enough of a concern. Other than that, this particular bolt is in good shape. And, if you're in a pinch, you could reuse it. However, it is hardened steel. It is a very special bolt. If you do not get new bolts and you need a new bolt, make sure you get the right one. You can look at the head there. Once this focuses, there you go. And see, it is a grade 10.9. So this is not your normal grade 8 bolt at the hardware store. This is a very strong, hardened steel bolt. Very crucial to have the right bolt in this application. And just to give you an idea again, that is how it seats in. Bolt goes through, holds everything in place. So make sure your ball joint is seated into the spindle before you insert this bolt back in. And here's the final result of the control arm replacement. We have both upper mount bolts back in, along with the pivot bolt here. As you can see, there's the head as it seats through the control arm, like I said, through the ball joint in that slot. Everything's back together and looking good. So we did have a little trouble again with this bolt back here, getting it back into place. We did have to move the fuel lines aside a little bit to get it to line up. It was not fun, but with a little bit of patience, you should have no problems doing that whatsoever. Next thing is to go ahead and get everything put somewhat into basic alignment. You do it with a plumb bob coming off of the fender here, dropping it down, and then measuring out to the brake rotor or the wheel mounting surface, and that'll give you a rough estimate to get you to the alignment shop. That'll get you at least close enough. It's not going to do anything funny while driving down the road. So after we do that, which I won't cover here, we're going to put the wheel back on and we're going to get going. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments and I'll try to do my best to answer them.